Oh, what? Of course. It's lost access to this. How's that possible? Hi, everyone. Technical difficulties. Please wait. StreamYard doesn't like me right now. There we go. I think we're back. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Relationship-Led Growth Live. Thank you for joining. This should be a fun conversation. Got Neil Barrow here with me. Neil is more on the sales and RevOps side of things. As you all know, I'm more on the marketing side of things. So we're going to have a fun conversation today about activation, or what we call activation. And I think a good place to start is to kind of set the stage a little bit. So, Neil and I work a lot, for the most part, with consulting and advisory firms. Some different subgroups within that, but one of the core things we both run into is the lack of planning and the focus on like just doing stuff versus doing the right stuff and planning to do the right stuff. That's what we're going to focus on today. And I think the reality with this industry that we work with is it's different from many others in a variety of ways, not least of which is on the business development side. A lot of the time we're working with doer sellers, right? We're working with managing partners, managing directors who do the selling, but their main responsibility is to be billable and to do client work and et cetera, and manage a team, things like that. And that's just a very different environment to most others where you have a dedicated sales force and a dedicated marketing team. I mean, we've worked with a number of companies where they're, 30, 40, $50 million, and they don't have a formal marketing team. They're working with outsourced partners, and then there's a marketing committee where they're doer marketers in that case, just like doer sellers. And I think to kind of land my intro here a little bit is it's important to create a plan that is executable based on the resources that currently exist and the operating model that exists for these firms. And that's where I think a lot of them often go wrong in a variety of ways.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think when you're looking at the doer seller model and professional financial consulting advisory service firms, right? Like business development is just something that you do, right? You're trained to be a CPA or attorney or architect, engineer, you're a technical person with a specific experience or expertise. But then you hit manager level and congratulations, now you need to go bring in business. And so we've done a lot, I think, as an industry. So, I spent 10 years in public accounting, and in that vein, I think we've done a lot of things, good things, where it's marketing support for individuals, right? And it's not necessarily, eventually, like you start out with just, hey, we need a marketing coordinator to do proposals and we just need them to do stuff. And then it's like, well, okay, what should we be doing and where should our focus be? And a lot of this is dictated by the founders, the people that have started it, the people that are actually bringing in the work. But there's not really formal support across the board for marketing and business development. Typically, as firms grow, they get better at it as they continue to get larger and drive more revenue. But when they're starting out and figuring it out, it's hard, because how do you develop business cohesively, right? When you've got a bunch of folks, when that's not necessarily their priority. It's a piece of what they do, but client service is their priority.
Yeah, and I think there's also this pre-election, if you will, to kind of run those two things separately. So the marketing and the business development, they're siloed, and you end up with a lot of wasted resources from a time perspective because of that, and not to mention wasted opportunities and all this kind of stuff.
Sure.
I think that's also where ensuring that the dots are connected, if you will. And I think that's where, again, something we call strategic activation. I think that's where it comes in terms of, okay, if we're going to spend time creating marketing assets, be it a podcast, be it an event, be it white papers, ebooks, I don't care what it is. How is that going to impact BD activity, whether it's being done by a dedicated team or not?
Yep.
Right. And
Yeah.
that actually makes a difference in terms of, well, if we have a dedicated BD team, we might do things differently on the marketing side because they can do more stuff because they're dedicated. If they don't, maybe we do things differently in the marketing
Yeah.
side because they simply don't have the time to leverage 50% of the stuff that we create. So why are we doing it?
Yeah.
Potentially.
No, yes. So I agree. Like when it comes to specific content, and then also, when you think about marketing and business development, what is that? like, some people use that interchangeably, marketing and business development, and so what is marketing for professionals, advisory firms, whenever you're talking to them, what is it, Mike? What is marketing?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, the job of marketing. So I'll give you my definition. I mean, the job of
Yeah.
marketing is to make sales better.
Yeah.
Realistically,
Okay.
it's to drive more deals, so revenue, or to help sales drive more deals, revenue, to help them drive higher ACVs, so margin, uh, and to help improve cash flow. So, okay, let's
Yeah.
drive deals faster, and to do those things better than sales can do on its own. Right. If all we're doing is, if sales already has this baseline of, okay, whatever, make this up, uh, they can work 100 deals a year,
Okay.
and the deals
Yeah.
of an average deal size of whatever, $250,000.
Yep.
Okay. That's I'm completely making this up. It's obviously
Sure.
never that linear, but whatever. If marketing can't exponentially improve that, then it doesn't work. And it's not doing the right things. So I think, again, this is where that integration is so important. It's how can we drive more deals? How can we do it faster? And how can we have them be more profitable deals?
Yeah. Uh, yes. And then how do we do that? Right. So like it's through, SEO, it's through content, it's through relationships, it's through organization of your contacts, right? It's for client management. So it's all of those things that marketing's help doing. And how I think about that is like, okay, marketing is bringing in brand awareness, making it easier for people to absorb content and get to know you, right? That's like making it easy. That's what marketing is bringing fresh eyeballs on what we're doing, right? When you think about business development is the intentional focus of these conversations. How do we move these conversations forward, right? And that's how they work in tandem. So I need marketing's help with content and branding and events and associations and organization and data management. I need marketing's help doing this, and then also with fun ideas to bring new eyeballs to it so that I can go out and have conversations with people. And then what
Yeah.
are we going to say? What are we going to do? How do we describe it? What is our differentiator? Like that's where marketing and business development intersect. Is I'm taking it from the streets. Here's what people are saying. Now we need to create stuff that addresses this, right?
Yep.
Hey, these are the problems that we're seeing here. How can marketing help message this with us?
Yep.
And so when you think about bringing those two together, that's how I see it, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I'll add a couple of things, within our framework, it's what we focus on is affinity more than awareness, right? I want
Yeah,
to
that's
become
great.
the brand that people have an affinity to,
Yeah,
right? Trust and credibility. And
yeah,
then marketing's job from there is to help sales start more conversations and then nurture the right relationships, right?
yes,
It's often not direct, but it's an assist in a way that's scalable. And we can get into some of the details, which I think is
sure.
maybe the next place to go here is, okay, you've talked about this a bunch in your content, and it's like, what are the basics? Like let's assume you're whatever. Honestly, that the size of firm doesn't matter, because I think a lot of these firms I've seen, even 20, $30 million firms, they're still kind of starting from scratch on this. They've sort of, ad hoc their way to wherever they are, and they've hit some sort of plateau usually, and they're trying to figure out why it's not working. And now they got to kind of do the next iteration and start over, if you will. So what are those basics, right? So in my mind, it's, okay, do we have alignment with on our ICP and the core growth strategy first? Yes, great. And from there, it's all right. What problems are we solving for these people? And
Mhm.
then what's our best way to then start conversations based on that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where, to me, it starts is, well, is it events? Do I need to start with just nurturing existing client and partner relationships first? If so, where does marketing come into that? What content needs to be created? Is it a formal partner program? Is it an informal partner? Like all these things, like that's where I think figuring out what the basics are and create that base level of performance and then layer in all sorts of other things.
Yes. So I think at first, like, you're just running and scrambling, and then you hire people and you're running a company, and then it's like, okay, well, we need a plan for all of this. And the thing that I hear from most of my managing partners and owners, CEOs, right, is, hey, we need our people to go out and do business development. Like, so we need our people that are doing the client service work, right? We need our consultants to go out and do business development. But what does that mean, right? And so when you think about, okay, a growth plan, that would be awesome, but most of these groups are run by committees, right? So there's challenges and there's barriers and there's multiple people doing it. One of the biggest things that I see is, like, there's not an owner. There's nobody that owns revenue, right?
Yep.
And so there's also a transparency problem with a lot of these firms. So there's a lot of barriers and challenges to having an overall growth plan for the firm. And so when you think about transparency, like, a lot of these firms don't share revenue numbers, right? They don't share growth numbers, right? So it's challenging for everybody to know what they should be doing and how they contribute, other than, hey, just get out there and go mix it up, right? But when you think about the basics, the basic thing that you can do at any level of business development is, it's not to go get trained. It's not, hey, we need more meetings. And another thing that I always hear is, hey, we need somebody out in the market. Nobody knows about us. We're hidden. We're a best kept secret, right? And I hear that all the time. And so what they really want to do is they want to go hire a business developer, right? Because they assume that that's going to solve some of the
Or a
challenges.
marketing agency to go do their SEO or whatever channel they believe is the way
Correct.
people are going to find them and build and drive awareness.
Exactly. You're right. So, like, you can take two different, like, I'm always very quick to say, hey, if you need marketing, like, if truly it's a website, brand awareness, challenge, searchability, right, for you, like, let's go get marketing help. Let's go get some marketing help. But if we think about it, it's like, we want our people to go do business development, if that's really where our opportunity lies, and we feel like that's a priority, like, then we can do that. And the most basic thing that you can do is help your people build their business development plan. That's it. And it's not, I don't need an overall growth plan, right? Like, that's phase 2, 3. It could be phase 1 for some folks, but for the people that I'm talking with, it's, our people don't even have a business development. They don't know what they should be doing. They don't know what they could be doing. They don't know what they want to do, right? And they think that business development is this soft skill. Like, you have to be, if you know DISC, you have to be a high I. You have to be an extrovert. You have to go and want to go grab beers and go golf and, go mix it up at events and stuff. And that's successful for a lot of people if that's how you're wired. But you don't have to do that to be good at business development. I have a lot of really technical partners that they are surprised to know that their entire BD plan can be just engaging their current clients.
Yep.
And being intentional about how they're having those conversations. And so, the answer to your question, and that was a long way to get there, but I think the easiest and basic way is to have every partner or manager, senior manager, key people who want to and who should be going and doing business development, getting them comfortable with their own plan that they help come up with, and then holding them accountable to doing that. That's it.
I think accountability is huge. And the other thing that I also find, and again, I think it's oftentimes there either isn't, or it's not communicated well to everybody of what the business growth strategy or business strategy even is. Like, where are we trying to get to and why? A lot of the time it's just sort of organic. Well, we've grown 15% year over year for the last 5 years. Let's just do it again.
Yeah.
Why? Because we've done it before and people like growth, right? It's sort of this like growth for the sake of growth thing, which is interesting. But then even if it's there and there is a purpose to it, sometimes it's not communicated well enough and it's not broken down. Okay, well, if we want to grow 15% year over year, and that equates to whatever, I'm gonna make that up, $5 million in net new, how much of that is also do we need to replace for churn, all that
Sure.
jazz? And then
Yeah.
who's responsible for what?
Yeah.
How are we going to get there? It's like, it's great to have a number, but okay, we have 5 partners, 5 practice areas. I'm again making that up. 5 practice areas. What's realistic for each of them? They're probably not equal. It's very unlikely in these multidisciplinary firms where everybody's equal.
Yeah.
Okay, just based on what the sub market is and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing, maybe worth mentioning here, is I wonder if you see this too, but I feel like a lot of the time I see companies like the founders and the CEOs who started the firm. They know it better than anybody. They usually are very often outgoing and gregarious and just really good natural salespeople. They didn't really learn it. They just learned it on the job, if you will, and they've learned to sell that business.
Sure.
And then they try to replicate. They bring in a new partner. They try to replicate themselves, and it doesn't work because everyone's different.
Yep.
And rather than finding ways to say, okay, this person's already really good.
Yeah.
This is actually where marketing comes in. How do we scale that persona?
Yep.
Through things like social selling and podcasts and webinars and whatever. There's a bunch of different tactics we can throw out there.
Sure.
But how do we scale them as a business development channel rather than saying, well, we're just gonna take Susan and make 5 other Susans because Susan's our rainmaker.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that. Yeah. I see that a lot. Right. And a lot of these folks that are in professional services have to figure that out. Right. And they either figure it out or they don't. And that's okay either way, but they have to figure it out at some level. And usually the people at the top offer those like coaching and mentoring, and they're involved in these practice group meetings, right, to talk about opportunities and ways to grow and events and things that they should be doing. And they're the ones that are involved in moving some of these things forward, but they want to involve everybody else, right? They want people to raise their hand and say, hey, I want to help. I want to help grow the business too. And that's ultimately what we want. We want that culture aspect, because I think a lot of determining what you need, whether that's marketing or business development or a combination of the two, when you think about the support for your firm, it's really what does the culture look like, right? And some of the culture challenges is centered around like, how often are we talking about growing? How often are we seeing and celebrating other people's success? Like, do we know and are we able to help and support and move the needle for some of these initiatives that our partners and other managers and senior managers want to do? And so I think there's a cultural component to growth, right? When you think about revenue or when you think about marketing and business development, that is a big consideration, because one of my clients, that was one of the things that we needed to work on is the culture of growth, because everybody kind of wants to participate, but we need a little bit of rah-rah at times to get everybody a little excited about it. And so we need to do more presentations. We need to get in front of the partner group more often to talk about and celebrate our wins and showcase what's working. And we need to do that on the regular. But that's how we can move some of the needle on the cultural front. So then we can say, okay, these are important to us. Marketing is important to us. Business development is important to us. And here's how we're going to support you in doing that. Because I fully believe in content marketing and podcasting and getting yourself out there to show your experience and to use that to start conversations. It's awesome, right? I've seen, and I'm not great at it, but there's some people out there that really are. And they do very good in generating new conversations. And so again, I think it's a cultural aspect to this marketing and business development. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, there are people that are really good at this, at some of these types of things, and there are people who are not. I mean, I still remember I had a CEO, and it might have been during the sales process still. And I think I mentioned the word podcast. He's like, I'm not getting in front of the camera. Don't even ask me.
Yeah.
He's like, duly noted. Okay.
Yeah.
right? So I think, but on the flip side, very much, great culture internally and same kind of stuff in terms of, finding ways to evangelize the plan and all
Yeah.
those things, I think were a problem
Yeah.
because it was very disparate. I think
Hmm.
they had 6 practice areas and number of managing partners and all that stuff. And there wasn't really a cohesive kind of, like you said, rah-rah, if you will,
Yeah.
um,
It,
that sort of put things out there and then celebrated successes against it. Um, something you mentioned earlier, I think, want to touch on is, this idea that, um, kind of nobody owns revenue, and kind of going back to that. Um, I do think that is a big challenge, and I think for a lot of these firms, that is probably one of the first things that needs to happen. Like,
yeah.
it's either the CEO or you have
Hmm.
somebody be your chief business officer, whatever, CRO if you want. I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
CRO functions in consulting firms, usually more in like like software and IT space. You don't find them a lot in like management consulting type spaces, but that's just titles at the end of the day.
Sure.
Um, but I think it has to start from there where there's a central person that's accountable for the work, that owns
Yep.
it. Doesn't mean they have to do everything by any means.
Right.
Um, and then from there, kind of figuring out what makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's maybe talk about that a bit. Get a little bit more tactical.
Sure.
So um, let's play out a scenario. Like let's say we're talking to a $25 million accounting and advisory firm. Okay,
Yeah.
they've got, I don't know, two BDs that are dedicated, and a number of managing partners that they're doing the majority of the sales, even though they have
Sure.
the BD function.
Sure.
Um, they don't have, well, let's say they have a marketing coordinator. That's pretty common.
Hmm.
Where do we start? I'm curious, like,
Yeah.
where would you start on that? I've got my thoughts, but
Yeah. No. Well, I think. First of all, your scenario that'd be interesting. I think, right, is like, because I see it kind of opposite sometimes, where marketing, we have two marketing folks, or marketing and a
oh,
BD
interesting.
person, right? And so, like, I think we're seeing some different stuff, but I like your scenario, and I think one of the things is when we think about growth, because I've been a part of great cultures, right? I've been employed by them, right? And I've been hired by them to consult with them. But one of the things, when you talk about leadership, it's typically where we'll hire a BD. We want BD people to go out and originate. Like, we need origination. So we think we need to hire Neil to go out and bring in new conversations to our firm. But when you boil it down, there's some complex issues there. So whenever you have two BD people, right, in your scenario, um, they're probably doing a lot of what we would consider marketing things, right? There may be event support, or um, uh, contact management, database management, right? Proposals, right? So there's quite a few things that they're probably doing that can fit under the marketing bucket, that they just kind of took on because it needed to be done, or because they came from marketing, or most BD people that are coming in new to a firm. So probably someone that's a smaller firm like that would hire a BD person who hasn't necessarily come from that industry or done BD before. And so they're just doing what is being kind of told that they need to do when fires come up. Hey, we need your support to do this RFP. We need your support to go to this event. We need your support to do these things. But with the idea of, we hired you to go do origination. What I'm seeing the shift in, right, or that the conversations that I'm having with folks is really moving that conversation from where BD is originating to enablement. right? So how do we enable, as BD, how do we enable our people, our partners, our senior managers to go and generate new conversations,
Yep.
right? With the people that we already know. And so one of the first things that I would do in a scenario like that is obviously assess what is happening today, like what is currently happening and what are the responsibilities. And typically when we hire a business development person, there's no training, right? It's, oh, hey, we hired you to get out there, go get $1 million. And then, what are you doing in the office? Like just, you should be out there having coffees and meetings, right? And being in the market. But as a manager, if I'm a managing partner, or if I'm the one of the practice leaders that basically said, okay, I'll manage the BD person, right? Or the BD people, they've never managed BD people before. And so they don't really know what to tell them to do outside of what has worked for them and what they think they want from this BD person. And that's not a bad thing. That's how I learned, right? I'm a trained sales guy, outside sales guy that had to figure out BD and how that worked internally with firms, right? And so I think it's really important to understand, what do we want the outcome to be for these BD folks? What is the outcome? And then how do we build the structure so that they can thrive? Some people have great structure in place to where, hey, we want them to focus on origination, and we know exactly what that looks like. We need them to work with these prospective clients. Here's our ideal client profile. Here's our referral sources. Here's the referral partners that we have. And these are the associations and conferences. And I need you to own all of these as BD. Some, it's like, well, we just need help with our practice groups growth. We need to grow these practice groups. And oftentimes that can be a challenge to wrangle all of those thoughts into one area. And so I've developed this assessment for BD that's firm, foundation, function, right? So it kind of goes through and says, okay, well, what is happening? How are we thinking about this at the top level, that trickles down to the practice group leader level, that trickles down to the industry groups, if we have those, that then trickles down to the individual, and then what level of support do we need to make all of that other stuff happen? And that's what, when I'm looking at BD, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I love that. And I'd be looking at, in that same scenario, I'd be looking at to understand what are the skill sets that they have and what are the skill sets that the partners have.
Mm-hmm.
And then honestly, I'd be figuring out, like, do you actually need 2 BD people in certain instances? Right?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
do you really need 2, or do you really
Yeah.
need the one that plays that more of an enablement
Sure.
role?
Yeah.
And then you leverage marketing to
Yeah.
scale, like we were talking about,
Yeah.
the managing partners or whatnot, get them
Sure.
out there, and again, support some more of the starting conversations.
Yeah.
And that might give you a much better ROI, maybe. And again, that all depends on that skill set discovery, understanding.
Sure.
Is there, like, I mean, step one in our assessment is always, is there alignment even? Does that alignment even exist? Like,
Yeah.
do the BD people and the group of partners, do they all agree who the ICP is? And it's amazing to me how often it's like, no, we don't, or it's just too damn broad.
No, the answer is no. Yeah. No, we don't know. That's the answer most times, right? And so to your point, like that simple exercise of doing that and then messaging and then distilling down the known universe into these little buckets. And that's what I talk to my clients all the time, is like, it's not like you need 100 new clients this year. You need like 10 really good ones, if that. Right. You need 10 really good ones. That's going to move your needle more, because you're going to get inbound. And that's a whole other discussion. You're going to get referrals. You're going to get inbound. How are you handling those? That's a tougher discussion. But like, if we're going to go outbound, it is. You're right.
It's related though, right? Because I think that's a really important point that I didn't mention in the beginning, but 100% true for all of these firms, right? I mean, I should say all. There are different models.
Sure.
But I think for the clients that we work with, the clients that you work with, I mean, we're talking, large deal sizes. They don't need, it's not like a SaaS product or whatever. Like, they're not working 1,000 deals a year. They're maybe working 100.
Yeah.
And we're talking like we're talking a 30 to $50 million firm is working maybe 100 to maybe 200 deals in a given year. At least that's what I'm seeing. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
similar to what you're seeing on your end.
It's all across the board
Yeah.
on volume for me.
So,
But yeah, you're right.
well, the reason I was bringing that up is that that affects both what you're doing for outbound and inbound. Meaning,
Yep. Agreed.
for one, you don't have the time to waste because a lot of these are doer sellers where you talk about that. But the other thing is there's often more of the market isn't infinite that they're going after, especially in some of these. It depends on the type of firm, right?
Yeah.
But like if you're a financial services firm that specializes in credit unions, well, you have a pretty finite market that you're working in. Or if you're a management consulting firm that focuses on only emerging biotech, that's a pretty finite market. So you can't afford to do the mass outbound and the transactional inbound because that's not going to give you what you need, and you're going to burn a bunch of bridges in a finite market.
Well, that, and then once you get them, what are you going to do with them? Like that's my whole thing, right? Is so like I'm a big believer in outbound. Like I'm a sales guy, right? I'm a big believer in outbound. It's part of a healthy diet that you have to have, but you have to do the basics first, right? So one of the things that I do is we come in and we look at the opportunities that are coming in and your win loss, like if you're tracking that, right? And we take a look at what's happening. So after you kind of have an idea of, again, what are the skill sets, what is the capacity, what are you actually needing, how many new clients a month would make sense, what's your average deal size, like taking a look at some of these things and then just assessing what's coming in and where are those going right now. Are we managing all of our opportunities the best we can? Are we maximizing those right now? And again, oftentimes the answer is no. And I think it's because of again, having a leader to own that function. Again, there's firms that are just successful and they've grown over the years just by doing good work. And that's a great growth strategy. But then when you hit a certain level and you're saying, you know what, we could be doing better, we need to be doing better. That's a big component of it is, hey, you don't need any more leads. Actually, you think you do, you think you need more meetings, but you just need to maximize the ones that you're already getting.
Or you need to get better ones.
Or you need to get better ones. Yes, that's a good point. Yeah.
So which actually brings up, there's something else that you talked about that I wanted to touch on, which is, you talk about like everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people want to be involved in growth. Mm-hmm. Not everybody knows how, not everybody can on a consistent basis, let's just say. I think that's where one of the biggest misses with most firms, I would say, and also where there's an opportunity to get more people involved is by bringing the existing networks to the surface. Mm-hmm. Like, do you have a plan to activate against the entire network of all of your consultants? Maybe not all of them. Maybe not everybody wants to participate, but let's assume it's even 50%.
Yeah.
Do you have do you know who knows who? I mean, so many times I'll be talking to a client, we're going through pipeline and it's, oh, well, it looks like this person knows this person and they're connected and let's go through them. Oh yeah, we didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Right. So let's go through them and here's your activation plan. Have that person send these 2 podcast clips and this assessment that you have put together because that applies to what they're talking about and that what the problem is or was, whatever. And then you're going through a trusted source. Off you go. But you can't do that unless those networks are brought up to the surface, and there almost never are.
Yeah, I think you're touching on a subject that is delicate at most firms, which is CRM management, and it's never like every firm that I've been at has had challenges with CRM management, and whether that's ownership or data cleanup or participation, like it's never really going to go well, right? And so I think when you think about utilizing a CRM and what do I need it to do, what is the outcome? a lot of times it's just like, hey, I need to put this in marketing, and we're going to dump all our contacts in there, and we're going to send
Yep.
out our newsletter or holiday or events, and this is how we're going to manage that. And that's cool if that's what you need to outcome. But when you're talking about relationship mapping and management, like that's a big piece of it. And there's tools out there that can help do that, right? And like LinkedIn Sales Nav is great for that, right? And so there's some things that you can do to kind of draw those lines together. But when you're talking about introductions and activating your own referral networks, that's what we want to do. And how I visualize it, and how it's been successful for me, and how I had one of my clients, we came up with their top 20. They kind of already knew what their top 20 targets were for the year, but we solidified it. We put who's in charge of it. And then we said, we're going to go take this and find out who knows who. Right. And so it took a little bit of thinking, and it took some time to put it together. But after a couple of months, they were able to get 2 meetings with their top 20 because of introductions.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's ultimately what we want to do. We say we need more leads, more leads, more leads. We need more meetings. We need more revenue. We need more clients. Sometimes it depends on the firm. Sometimes they're saying, hey, time out. We're underwater. But most of the time when they're thinking about growth in this way, it's, well, have you called your clients? Do you know who you want to meet? And you can ask your friends and good relationships and referral sources and take that to it. So I think you're right on with that. And how do you activate your own network? Because people think it's more and grow and we got to do this, but are we doing what we can with what we have already?
Yep. Yeah, 100%. So I think going back to our scenario, I would be starting with, do we have a way to do this? Like, how are we talking to existing clients? How are we getting them involved and getting sort of, because, the other big thing is a lot of these firms really struggle to get case studies, especially if they're in regulated industries, things like that. It's virtually impossible. But that's maybe where, and again, this is where marketing comes in. Do you host a webinar series where you invite your clients, and now you've made that connection without formally saying, hey, we work with so-and-so and they do, whatever. So now that's one way to activate people. But whatever it is, I'd be looking for ways to activate the existing client and past client network.
Yep.
Next level for me would be partners, formal or informal, doesn't matter, honestly, in my mind.
Yeah.
Obviously the way you treat them is different, but
sure.
And then from there, I'd be looking at like close lost. How do you reactivate and re-engage these people that especially the ones that had a real interest, not like the ones where you had a discovery conversation, didn't go well.
Sure.
But like you're in proposal stage, there was an RFP, maybe, whatever, depending on the industry, and you lost those. Okay. That's where I put all the pieces together and go, okay, what content do we need? Let's be very specific. Let's not go and boil the ocean. Like, what were the problems that they were having? Let's create content around that. Who do they know, and who in our network knows them? Great. Connect those two dots. Like that's where I start from. That to me, that's the activation versus activity comparison, right? Activity is, you just like, this person just goes and does outreach to existing clients. Marketing goes and creates content. We have activity.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I think you're right. Being strategic, like, hey, instead of going to that event, right, that happy hour, networking happy hour, why don't you spend that hour and a half going through your close lost? Right? Like, and emailing those people from like 3 years ago. Right. But then the BD side of it is, well, what do we say?
Yep.
Like,
and that to me, that's where marketing comes in, right? Because marketing because BD is usually, the good people, I think, can do it on their own. Realistically, they can,
sure,
they can, but not everybody can, first of all. And that's, I think, where marketing can come into play, where it's all right. It's the same process to me as deals in pipeline versus closed lost. What do you say as a next step? Let's assume a deal stalled.
Yeah.
It's not,
what do you say?
Hey,
what do you say, Mike? In. Yeah. What do you say, Mike?
It depends, obviously, in here, but it's if it's something that's stalled, and again, I've got assets where I don't say anything. I just invite them to the next live, or I reach out to their if I haven't already, I reach out to their VP of marketing or whoever they have and potentially invite them onto the podcast, or reach out to their chief business officer, invite them to our other podcast, right? There's different ways to get conversations going. Or if I know why the deal stalled, I create a piece of content and I post it and then I share it with them.
Yep.
I mean, I've done that countless times where, I'd be in a alignment call and so they had a question. I answered fairly well, but I could tell there was something like they're hesitant.
Yep.
But the call ended, right? And I didn't get a chance to address it. Well, I go back to I create a LinkedIn post, could be a video, could be written, and I put it out there. Sometimes I message them directly, with something like, hey, we were talking about XYZ. I had some time to really think on it and expound a little bit more. I thought you might find this valuable. That's it. Right. And now, again, not everybody has that skill set or the comfort with LinkedIn that I do.
Sure.
But also I think that's where marketing come in and they can help. It's like,
yes.
Oh, this is where they're stuck. Okay. Jump on let's have you jump into a quick meeting. I'll ask you some questions, me being the marketer. You'll answer them. I'll chop this thing up. I'll create some content for you. Now you've got something to share.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's great, using marketing content as a re-engagement for folks, right? And using that as a moving deals forward in the pipeline. I think that's super strong, right? But I think practically, when you're looking at most firms, that would be an ideal state for them if they could do that, if they had the people and they had the resources to do that. And I know that's what you're offering, right? Is to help them with that. But a lot of them, again, it's this capacity. It's this, is this worth it? Do we have the time? Is this a priority? Is this actually going to work? Like, I don't want to have to do this. Who's going to be doing this? And so there's a lot of challenges to doing that. And so I think how marketing and BD, because I see marketers doing this a lot in firms, right? They're helping move the needle through the sales process down the road, and they're helping with opportunity management, and they're doing these things already. But when you're thinking practically, what can you do to move the needle, right, at a firm that doesn't have a lot of resources, right? And I think that's where a lot of people are, is like, how do we do the best we can with what we have already? And I think doing that is like helping. Kind of what we're doing right now is just giving away, like, hey, what I need you to do is, like, again, not go to that event. I need you to pull up your last 5 years of opportunities, and I need you to go through that. Can you? You're probably going to have to go through your Outlook, right? And so there's some things that you're going to have to do.
Because there's no notes in the CRM.
It's like,
what was this proposal for? I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember that, right? And then utilizing marketing to help capture some of this information to keep us accountable of the things. Okay, we need to do the close lost. We need to go back through that every year, right? We need to jar some of these opportunities that have been hanging around for a while, right? And we haven't done the follow-up that we need to do. So where does BD come in to help move some of these things forward? And then I love your ideas around what content do we need that we've learned from our engagements or our sales process that we have. Like, what do we need to help move some of these things forward, or re-engage people, or give them an incentive to raise their hand and say, hey, we want to chat, right? So what does that look like? But I think you're right on, but I think it's that practicalness to a lot of these smaller firms that you're talking about that are 20 million. They have a marketing person. They may have, if they do, they might have a BD person, right? And so how are we supposed, as a firm, how are we supposed to work with them? I think that's a big piece as well.
Yep.
So yeah. There's no one answer. I would just be like, hey, I'd challenge you on the BD front to think about, okay, well, do we need this person out there in the market, or do I need their help to help me just figure all this out of people that already like us and love us and want to give us a referral, but we haven't asked. So
I don't know. Like, I know there's not a one size fits all for sure. And we can always find edge cases. I would argue in most cases, these firms would be better off investing in enablement resources and bringing in fractional leadership help at that size. Once you get to 40 to 50 million,
Yeah.
that changes.
Agreed.
That's where you need ideally like a marketing director type person. You probably need a somebody in the firm to be fully responsible for you, like a
Sure.
chief business officer type. Right. But
Yeah.
like in those smaller firms, say, 15, 20 million, I think it's, you need more of maybe you can even do it like a one person that their job is enablement. It's, I'm
Yeah.
going to pull lists. I'm going to, create assets. I'm going to help with sales decks, that kind of thing. And then you leverage fractional leadership help to build the plan, build the strategy, advise on the activation front of things. Because it's so hard, I think, to get the right resources for those firms. They're, especially like for marketers, they're not sexy usually. So a lot of the marketers want to go work for, CPG companies or SaaS or,
Yeah.
high tech manufacturing, all those kinds of things. Like
Yeah.
it's true. Like most consulting firms are not like seen as oh, this is sexy kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
And I think with BD people too, it's a very specific skill set, right? It's,
sure.
you have to really know the industry to be able to do like the BD work really well, not the
Yeah.
enablement, but to go out there and have the conversations like that. You can't just go and hire a bunch of BD people and say, okay, go ahead. Even though people do that, and they usually fail. Like you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think there needs to be some level of strategy and leadership with execution and implementation, right? And support, right? And there has to be that combo. But I find most firms, right, they'll hire a marketing person, typically like a marketing coordinator, and then they're just putting out fires, right? There's no way to be strategic, right?
Well, they can't be. They simply don't have the
Yeah.
skill set 99% of the time.
Correct. They might not have the skill set, or they might not have the time or capacity because of like, hey, we've got, we're putting on 25 or hosting 25 or being a part of 25, 50 events this year, associations, conferences. I've got to manage all of that. Plus I've got to manage. And so I'm speaking to the marketing folks that I work with, and there's no real way to utilize them in a strategic way. And so I think it would be great if you could plug in like like fractional BD leadership, or you like helping them with their marketing leadership. But in reality, what they need is like, how do we execute? Like, and what do we have the capacity right now to execute on? And what is going to move the needle the fastest for us? And I think when you think about those smaller firms, like under 5 million, and this can go way higher, but like under 5 million, it's really focusing on your ICP, your messaging, your unique selling proposition, right? And then it's having those key conversations with people that you already know or you need to develop relationships with, like, and then
it's understanding that ecosystem. Yeah,
it's understanding that, right? And then over 5 million, right? Then it's okay. Well, we need probably add a marketing coordinator or administrator to help us with all of these things that we need to do, that I need help with. And then it's continuing that process. But I think you get to that certain point where you're like, man, like I've got all these clients, I've got all these referral sources, I'm doing all these things, I'm doing great work, we've got a good name, like, but how do I grow? Like, what should I be doing? And I think it kind of comes back to our, like, do you have a plan? Right. And
well, let's talk. I mean, because again, I think we've established for everyone listening that you have to have a plan and you have to prioritize.
Yep.
Let's take some, again, every firm is going to be different.
Sure.
But let's look at some typical types of activities the firms do that are often, they look at them as just activity and they don't really plan for. So to me, that's events, virtual events, webinars, whatever you want to call them. And some sort of thought leadership. That could be podcasts, that could be white paper, article writing. Those are the three core things that pretty much every firm does in some way, shape, or form. But they're usually focused on the activity. How many blogs are we going to write this year? And how many events are we going to do? And how many webinars are we going to run? Like that's sort of it. It's volume of activity versus tying all the pieces together. So let's take them maybe one at a time and walk people through, okay, what does strategic activation actually look like for these activities? Like if someone's doing those, if they've already decided, yep, this is a high priority activity for me, how can we help them get the most out of it?
Yeah.
Let's start with events, because I feel like just about in the consulting space, events are still huge. It's a big budget line item. It's lots of time, and you just kind of have to do it still. That's where a lot of these conversations happen.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, from an event standpoint, I think one of the first challenges is getting everybody to submit their lists for invitation, right? I think that's the one thing that marketers and maybe business development people do struggle with is like, okay, well, who are the people that we need to invite?
Oh, sorry, we're talking about events that we're hosting.
Yeah. Or what were you talking about? Events that we're going
I was talking about
to,
events that you're either exhibiting at or attending. But
okay.
Either way, we can start either way. Let's go with the one you were going with.
Yeah, no, that's it. So if we're hosting an event, so quickly, if we're hosting an event, like that's the biggest challenge, right? Is organization around that. And this is basics, but you've got to have a list of people that attended this event or events like this in the past, whether that's on your Excel, in your CRM, whatever. But we've got to keep track of this every year and who's attending and who needs to be a part of this. And once that's business development, and those are one-on-one conversations with either marketing or business development. And then once I have it, then it's all in the follow-up, right? And it's how do we, because it's that rental car joke on Seinfeld, right? Where everybody, anyone can take a reservation. It's the holding that matters. Anybody can have an event. It's the follow-up that matters, right? So like I need to be following up with the people that I'm hosting. I think we're just talking about going to an event. There's a lot to unpack there. So who are the sponsors? Who are your who are the sponsors of this event? Do you get the attendee list? Do you get you're going to see who the speakers are? It's managing your agenda while you're down there. And then it's like, this is work, right? I know that because when you think about a practitioner or technician or professional going down, spending their time away from their clients, away from the work that they've got to do, away from their teams, away from their families, and they're going down to this event or they're spending their time doing that. We've got to maximize that time. And what that looks like is going to the panels or speakers that you want to see, and then meeting with those speakers afterwards and saying hello. And then it's working with your marketing and business development team, if you have them, to then take back all of the information. So the sponsors, speakers, people, and then who's following up with who. And we've got to do that follow-up. And it's got to be personal and it's got to be effective. And so I recommend a couple of different emails based on the relationship, but we've got to maximize that. And it's really all in the follow-up. And there's not an excuse of, if we're going to spend time and money and resources and you're going to spend your time on it, you've got to do the follow-up. So how do we get people and support to help us do that?
Yeah, I think to layer in a couple tactical things, I don't for events you're hosting, I'd also be looking at pipeline and saying, okay, what is currently in pipeline that it's either stalled or whatever, where this event makes sense, that gets added to the invite list. I don't think it should be everybody.
Sure, I agree. Yeah,
because that's the other place people go, oh, let's just invite everybody.
Yeah, no.
You might also be like, you might be actually inviting them at the wrong time.
Sure.
Maybe you're in contract negotiation phase and maybe something's not going 100% well. And all of a sudden, hey, attend our event. Ooh, shit, you just messed that up.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to be careful about that.
Yeah.
And then similar to what you're talking about, to me, it's again, this is where I think marketing can play. It's pre-event, during event, post-event.
Yep.
How do you get people excited for the event? Mm-hmm. I think you can, I think usually what most do is, hey, we're going to be running this event, sign up. And then as a reminder, don't forget we're running this event. And there's another reminder, don't forget we're running this event. It's like, oh my God, I get it.
Yeah.
Get out. Yeah. Where you could make it much more, your pre-event could be much more interesting. There could be the more generic stuff, which is, here are the speakers, here's something interesting that you're going to learn. Maybe you drip that out if it's a panel, let's just say, whatever, right? And then there might be something that's more specific, meaning for certain people that are in your pipeline, you give them a very tailored pre-event thing. Hey, we were just talking about XYZ in our last meeting. Such and such speaker is going to be having a session on it. You might want to sign up for this. Here's what I don't have their full thing, but you're going to learn something about X, Y, and Z. Cool. Yeah. And then you followed up with them. if they did or didn't sign up, your follow-up might be different, those types of things. During the event, you have to have somebody, like if it's a virtual event, someone's going to be manning the chats and understand, like pulling insights out, things like that, making sure there's engagement, planning for those things. And then after the event, again, it's the same thing. Follow up. How do you follow up? Usually it's like, hey, if you didn't get a chance to attend, here's the recording. Done.
Yeah.
That's not enough.
Yeah.
Like that's a wasted asset, both from a BD perspective and a marketing perspective. So that's where I think that activation goes. Hey, if we're going to invest our time in running this event, what is the objective? Are we hoping to get conversations out of it? Hopefully. If so, how many? And where do we think they're going to come from? I mean, you're not going to get it all right, but at least having that plan of why am I doing this and who do I need to talk to and all that stuff, which is what you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And I think especially with webinar, and if we're going to host those, like again, and to your point on specific invitations, like, it's not everybody, it's very specific people. And so we need the content that that's going to speak to those folks. Right. So yeah, I agree. Events are something that everybody does and something that we want to do more of. Some people are great at it, but it's all in the follow-up afterwards too. But I like your pre, during, and post. Like I think I talk a lot about that too. It's kind of the same message, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I think for the in-person events, last thing out there before we wrap this up is planning for the attendance, meaning reach out to the speakers ahead of time.
Yep.
Build those relationships.
Yep.
If you know who's attending, if you got the attendee list, reach out to the people that you are targeting, that are on your target list.
Yep.
Try to get those meetings scheduled. Like, don't just leave it to chance. You got to run into them.
Sure.
And then when your outreach might be, again, it could be, hey, I know you're attending this. This is where you can connect the dots to, hey, we hosted an event about a similar topic. You might be interested in XYZ, and maybe you have somebody speaking at it too. Oh, and that person's also speaking, so you may want to go attend that session. Like, again, this is where like really thinking through and connecting the dots, I think, is really, really important pre-event.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, to all.
All right, I think we've beat that dead horse, if you will. So, if anyone's got any questions, reach out to Neil on LinkedIn. Reach out to me, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. Neil, this has been fun.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. Take care, Mike.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.